I don't think art exists just to make you feel better. The best art challenges you. You are different as a result of interacting with it.
Take a big sip of tea after that.
Hello and welcome to the Poetry Vessel podcast, episode 3. Today I am sat down with my wife, Rachael Hassall. Rachel, welcome once again.
Third time guest. I'm so
Third time guest.
excited. I'm the most frequent guest so far on your podcast.
Yeah, and you just keep coming back.
I know. Can't keep me away.
So, Rachel, today we thought we'd start off by talking a little bit about joy, and we're going to start with Mary Oliver, and she said that joy was not made to be a crumb. What do you think about that?
I think there's a lot of ways that you can analyze that, and I'm looking forward to hearing your analysis too. But before I get into that, I feel like I'm happy, I'm joyful that this is the topic today. I think especially in today's world, finding ironically crumbs of joy are really important. So maybe there's a little bit of poking back that I want to do at Mary Oliver, because I do think you can find bits and pieces or crumbs of joy in your daily life. But I can see what she's saying in that, like, when you feel joy, I feel like you don't feel it in a way that it's like a crumb of joy. Joy is something that you feel all throughout your body, and is more like the whole loaf. I don't know. What do you think? I know you love Mary Oliver too, so I'm sure you've got lots to say on that.
The idea that joy was not made to be a crumb makes me think about, even though, as you were saying, it's good if you need to find crumbs of joy because there's not always, joy isn't ever abundant. I think this is quite an idealistic way of looking at the world and not necessarily realistic. If you think about, oh, joy is abundant and everywhere, and you're like, well, that may be true if you also add like its opposite, like suffering, into the mix. So I think the idea of it not made to be a crumb is that if you are experiencing it, there's a way in which you can gift it to others. So joy is meant to be more like a loaf, and what are you meant to do with bread? It's break it and share it. So
Yeah.
I take that from the quote. And just to say, joy is quite I find a difficult topic to approach. I think it's in the English cultural shadow, that feeling joyful or showing joy, unless it's in very specific circumstances, like being drunk and singing or being at a football match and chanting. Like, joy is not one of the emotions that you see expressed a lot. We tend to be more like this.
Hmm. Well, I'm glad you clarified too, because I mean, obviously the words are so important. Joy is not made to be a crumb. When it's made to be a crumb, is like that choice of words changes, I think, how I initially thought about it. And I liked your image of joy is made to be shared, or I mean, we just got out of the holiday season. This is, it's 2025 now.
Yeah.
um and a lot of people, I think, will say that, December or the holidays are like a time that are meant to be filled with joy. But there's plenty of times in our lives that are not filled with joy, or maybe don't align with that fully. But I definitely aspire to have more joy in my life this year.
Yeah.
It's one of my resolutions.
I think it's a great aspiration, and it's perhaps a moral aspiration if you are thinking about it being shared, because if you feel joy and you pass it on, you're creating more joy in the world. And yeah, I think there's a pressure to feel joy in the holiday period for people. Be in good cheer and happy new year. And there's stuff that, can be infused with optimism. And also, there's joy to be had. There's families coming together often. But there's also, pain and heartbreak and the other things. So I think along with the full spectrum of human emotion and experience, joy is just one of them, and one of the more, you know, desirable feelings. Because when you feel joy, what's the phrase? Jumping for joy, like joy. Even when you say it, kind of feel it lifting, but it's within the sea of everything else. It's just one of the possible things you can experience, and something I would say is an experience you want more often.
Yeah, I think everyone wants to feel joy. So maybe let's talk about joy in writing or joy in poetry. Like you brought up Mary Oliver as like a prime example of really encapsulating um, like a metaphor of joy in poetry. Are there any other like key metaphors or things that come to mind in terms of joy and its relation to poetry, or perhaps the joy in creating poetry?
Yeah, I think that's where my head went to first. I mean, there's joy in the reading and there's joy in the writing. So I wouldn't say personally, if I'm sitting and writing poetry, I wouldn't say that the full act is joyful. A lot of it's there's the kind of creative flow in a draft. Then there's the frustration of rereading it and realizing it's not as good as it felt like it was when it first came out. There's usually, for me, joy in the discovery. It's like a eureka moment. Like you find something out through writing poetry, something true or eternal or new that you didn't know beforehand. So when I'm writing, there's potential for joyful moments. But again, to keep the opposite, there's also potential for despairing moments, but they lead to something greater, and I would hope knowledge or wisdom of the world from doing it. So the joy, and joy generally, also needs to be earned, I think, or there's an aspect of it that you earn
Do you
through
think you
what
have
you're
to
doing.
earn joy? I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like you can't pressure joy as well. Like I feel like joy is such a natural, exuberant feeling, and there's times like I'm thinking about all the times in life where you say something is like joyful. Like maybe someone's just had a baby, it's a bundle of joy. Or again, the holidays are filled with joy. Like those are some like associations that I have with joy.
Do you not think you earn the joy of your baby through the process?
I mean, obviously, to people who are pregnant, that definitely I guess you're earning it. There's some work
I know, it's a
that
strange
goes
word.
in, but I don't know if you earn joy because joy is part of the human experience, right? It's like anything. Do you earn sadness? Do you earn happiness? Do you like? Is it some like? I guess that's more of a philosophical question. Like I don't know if it's something you earn or if it's something that happens to you or that you just feel. Like, I think you can feel joy without earning it.
There's probably, I mean, there's probably both and more. I think you can do things that turn to the earning of it. And I guess writing was
Like, your hard
one of the
work leads to
examples.
joy.
Maybe it's hard work, but something, yeah, the craft or something that you're working on can lead to joy. You can earn it that way, but like you were saying, and I would expand, it's like it can be completely spontaneous, but it can also be, maybe earned's not the right word here, but you experience it as a result of doing good
Mm.
rather than doing bad. And maybe it's easier to do bad than good. Maybe good takes more effort. And maybe there's a sense of earning in that. There's probably a better word, but that's kind of where I'm thinking at the moment. So I think you're right, but I think there's like multiple ways to get to that emotion.
Yeah, I think
What do you think?
I think that makes sense. But I think the real question here is, Nathan, why do you want to talk about joy today? What in you is inspiring wanting to think about and talk about joy?
Some of it's what we've been making artistically through videos. And part of what we're doing, it's like, well, there's one of the central ethos. There's a central ethos in what we're doing, that's to inspire. And one of the things I'd like to inspire is joy, not purely joy. So wanting to talk about it, it's also because I find it difficult to talk about. Even right now, I feel like there's a resistance in me to that sensibility, which is why I don't know whether that's being English, being uh, a man that can suppress certain emotions, if that's just me, all of the above. So because I find it challenging to get to, that I think it's good to talk about. Like I do experience it.
I hope you
We
experienced
we got
joy.
married, right? Our wedding was, I mean, that was joy.
That was an amazing day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I've had joy at, not quite as profoundly, but joy at music concerts.
Mhm.
I've had joy, on my own reading and writing. I've had joy traveling. I've had joy seeing someone else joyful. Sometimes there's people, and this is back to it's not a Crumb idea. Someone comes into a room and is just, you say they lit up the room. Sometimes they light it up with joy, and they feel so good that then you feel good. If you're cynical, this goes back to the earn idea. Perhaps it's like, if you're cynical, someone else's joy probably pisses you off,
Hmm.
and that's not a good thing. Like if you're in that state, there's
Why
probably
are they
work to
so
be done.
happy?
Yeah, and I've been there. In more depressive phases when I was younger, hearing a group laughing. Oh, what's so funny? Or I think they're laughing at me, because
Mm.
when you're feeling depressed, you collapse into yourself, and the world. It's as if the world is reacting to you, but it's a group of people laughing amongst themselves, and they don't even notice you walking, or if they do, not interested.
Most people are more concerned, I think, with what's going on with them, which I think is like hard for anxious people like me to put two and two together sometimes of um that not everybody's thinking about you or watching you, or like that sounds more paranoid, but
There's an
like the
interlinking.
people are usually worried about, like, if you're in a dance class, like they're thinking about how they're looking in the dance class. Most people are not watching you dance unless you're doing something really outrageous.
Yeah, unless you're just like spinning on your head as you usually do when you're
Yeah,
dancing.
if you're break dancing in a ballet class, then maybe people are looking at you and
Yeah,
paying attention. So there's a bit of truth in both.
yeah,
But I know you like to think about the duality of things. So like the joy with the darkness, or the light and the dark. So it is interesting to think about how that can bring out both through the creative writing expression.
yeah. Well, I'm one of those believers in things call out their opposites along the pole. So it's like you can never have one without the other. It's an ancient idea. It's like the simplest one is like you can't have, you know, light without dark, and vice versa. You wouldn't know what light was if it wasn't casting shadows, or if it didn't go away. So I feel the same with joy, you know.
Yeah, and I think I certainly want to share joy with others. Like you said, even through these videos or different things that we're doing, um, it's great to do things that great to immerse yourself in joy with others, because it is such a great shared kind of emotion and feeling.
Yeah. And I think that goes along as well. You're just mentioning videos. It's like it goes along with the beauty idea. One of the beautiful emotions I'd say is joy. It's like, there's a reason it's there. It's one of the best things you can feel. It's elation. It's like this opening, and it's something, and this is where I have a complex relationship with it. It's something that opens up and is so intense that I can rush in to want to control it rather than letting it pass through and up and open. So it's like I've had a almost ironic impulse to it sometimes to be like, oh, I'm starting to feel joyful. That's going to make me open out more. I've got to push that back in. I've like repress it and go, and like kind of go a bit dead faced or something. So kind of disassociate from the positive emotion because the emotion is so intense. So I think has been a shutting down of intensity, which is a overwhelmingly positive intensity. Like, why is the next question? But
Why what?
why shut it down? Why would I shut it down? Why do other people that experience it shut it down, and why do other people find it so easy to feel and express?
I know, I feel like I'm trying to avoid, like, asking you questions that would be better suited for a therapist's
I
office.
was about to be like, how close are we to that edge?
But I think to me, that's more interesting than the theory sometimes. I think we all feel joy. We've all had a moment in our lives where we felt immense, powerful joy. At least I'd hope most of us feel like that. I feel like when you're in a depressive state currently, I think it's easy to think when you're in that cloud, I've never felt joy. I can't think of a single time in my life where I felt joy. I feel like that's the mindset you get into when you're in one of those states, or at least from my own experience, that's what I've felt. But I feel like hopefully the majority of people can think of a time in their life where they felt joy.
Yeah,
And while that's like almost like joy as a feeling is really like that on its own, like as a thing that we all share in the human experience of like what joy feels like is really important. But I have a personal interest in like thinking about when you're saying, I start to feel joy and then I want to push it down, like almost not let myself feel the joy. Like that's more interesting to me sometimes, I guess because it's you. Like when I want to know why you feel like that. And I think that's something that is shared amongst a lot of people. Like I certainly feel like that sometimes too, where like don't get too overexcited, like don't be, don't let yourself feel too happy yet, like all of those kinds of things. Um,
I think in what you just said, there's a sensible impulse in there somewhere that sometimes misfires, because you said, "Oh, don't feel too happy yet." There are sometimes things that you think are coming together, but you don't know until they actually do. So it's like that celebrate too early, like
mhm.
thinking you've scored a goal because it looks like the ball's about to
Oh
roll over the
boy,
line,
have
but
you
then
seen
someone,
videos like that too when the like you see a whole team celebrate and then you're just like
oh, it never really
and
crossed the line.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then at the last second some other defender like kicks it out and you're like, "Ah."
Yeah. So there's
It's deserved.
Yeah. So there's something in that. There is something to celebrating too early and thinking something's in the bag when it isn't. For me, as you said you were interested, for me, the desire, not desire, desire, not desire, we did the negation we spoke about in the last podcast. The want to shut it down is the sense of it going out of control. It's the positive emotion, like anger can be. Like anger's another emotion that can completely spiral out of control. I think joy can get out of control because it can be manic. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's like, oh, if I'm manic, am I really joyful? Or am I just feeling intense emotions, but are they going to send me every which way? Like, is it going to be channeled? And then I guess we're talking about writing or creativity. It's like, it's a way to like channel a feeling like joy that's intense and move through it rather than it just sending me wild. It's the wildness is difficult.
Sounds like you have fear of joy.
Ah, there's truth in that. Yeah, I'm afraid of intense emotion unless it's happening. It's not afraid of the emotion while it's happening. It's
The what
afraid of,
if.
yeah, it's the unknown and knowing it's going to be intense.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, what about you? What's your relationship to
To
joy?
joy?
Yeah.
My relationship to joy. That is a good question and a hard question. Um, I think it's different than your relationship to your own joy. I feel like when I feel joyful, it's when I'm not thinking too hard, ironically. So it's like thinking about joy, like, you know what I mean? It's like I'm going through that thing in my head of like I'm thinking about a time that I felt joyful, and when did I feel joyful? It's usually when like I'm relaxed, and maybe that's speaking to my own psychology of like I'm a big perfectionist, like I can be a little bit of a control freak, I can be a bit type A. So
You?
yeah, me.
That's
um
news.
so when I'm feeling pure joy, I feel like I've let loose somewhere, and I'm just letting myself feel happy and be in the moment and like take in whatever I'm taking in. I'm looking around, and I'm just you just feel it like in your heart somewhere. I don't think I worry about letting myself feel joyful in the same way that you do. Um it's like trying to avoid saying like really depressing emo things,
You can, no, no, we gotta be honest.
but it's like sometimes those pure like moments that are full of so much like ecstasy or something can be rare. And I
Mm.
don't think moments of joy have to be that kind of like extreme, like, oh my God, this is the best I've ever felt. Like, I think you can have joy in all types of ways and on all sorts of levels across the whole spectrum. But um, I was going to say, I don't worry about being there too long, because it's like my normal is like I'm generally a pretty happy person. I have like my low points and things too, but I don't often worry about spiraling into that. I there's other things that I spiral into, like maybe again like more anxious thoughts or more like worried thoughts or like self-doubt thoughts, but I don't worry about joy. I don't think I control joy in the same way
Yeah,
that you do.
yeah. I
Gonna
oh, let's
take
have
a
a tea
big
break.
sip of tea after that.
I have a response.
Okay, I was gonna say, I hope that's okay to say, because I don't want you to
Yeah.
feel like you're put on blast on the internet on a podcast.
No, you could like continue with it. I'm just being open. I'm completely fine with it.
Okay.
So I have a metaphor. You mentioned metaphor earlier, and this is something I've discussed with both of my brothers, and I don't remember the origin of the metaphor. I think it's kind of like a if something becomes like family mythology or something, it's like I don't remember who first came up with it. I don't know if we've all expanded on it or if I'm just ripping it off from one of them or if I said it first. Like I don't remember. I'm sure one of them remembers. Anyway, it's like joy is like running towards the edge of a cliff, and it's great to run. It's exuberant. There's wind passing through and over your hair. It's cool. You're panting. Your heart's thumping. The clouds are opening. The sun is shining. But there's an edge, and it's like, at what point do you run with the joy and not let it be an edge that you fall off and it turns into a cliff and then into, you fall into the ocean and into the dark or whatever. That's where it's like, well, I don't need to block it, but it's like not wanting it. I think I've got it. It's to think, is this joy or is this manic? And they're different things.
Hmm.
Joy is pure and fantastic. Manic like feels like a good mood, but it's preempting the real mood, which is low. I think it's capping a lowness. Whereas joy isn't capping a lowness. Joy is just joy. It's actually, you know, once you calm down, you feel good. But from mania, once it finishes, it's low. So I
Hmm.
think it's like, for me, it's been to learn which of the emotions or feelings it really is. So I think that's why there's been more of a pressing in of it. However, I feel joy and I let myself experience it a lot more. I mean, we've had poetry readings here when Anne Buxey hosts Jubilations. It's celebration of joy. And I have written poems and read at them and felt, in joy. I enjoyed them. I was inside of joy being at the event. So It's a complex relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that goes back to the crumb aspect with Mary Oliver, and maybe even taking some of the pressure off of Joy, of like, all right, well, I know this isn't exactly what she said, but again, are you like finding crumbs of joy in your everyday life? Because crumbs of joy are not a cliff edge. They're like bits of happiness, right? Things that bring you joy. There's like the Marie Kondo, I hope I'm saying that right, theory or concept, right? Where I think most people have heard about this, where you'll take like, a pillow or an object in your home, you hold it and ask yourself, like, does it bring you joy? And if it doesn't bring you joy, then toss it, get rid of the item, or donate the item to someone that would appreciate it. And if it does give you joy, okay, those are the things that you keep and you hold because it brings you some type of happiness. And I'm sure, I haven't read her book. I've seen some of the different shows and things that she's been on, but I'm sure she defines joy in a unique and specific way too. Like even just little things like this, I'm like, I have a green tea in my hands, and drinking this green tea, I feel like that crumb of joy. I feel that bit of joy in my day because it's something that makes me happy. So it doesn't have to always be something that's really extreme or manic to be joyful. And I think you know that, but
Yeah,
but I can also see how, in terms of the creative joy, if the creative joy turns into a manic state, then it definitely could feel like a cliff edge. And that there's some sort of end in sight where this feeling is going to end eventually, and like maybe it's sucking and taking so much out of you that you're falling off the cliff by the end of it.
yeah.
Um so that's kind of like what I think is, in terms of like everyday joy. And maybe these are the things that you talk about in your writing sometimes. I've heard you write about poems where um, it's about an egg on a piece of toast, a sunny side up egg. And you'll talk about the yolk, and you'll talk about the fork going into the yolk, and the yolk spreading. I mean, you say it so much better, but like maybe spreading into all the crevices on the bread or the crumpet or whatever it is. And that's like a form of like an observation of like, ooh, okay, eating this egg brings me some joy. Even if it's that little crumb, like it's like enjoyment. Maybe I need a better definition for what joy is for as a basis for this conversation. But to me, that's those are those little crumbs of joy.
So yeah, I actually what you're saying, you say, "Oh, I bet you know this," but I'm like, I think this is the first thing I'm observing in what you said. It's like joy is on this spectrum. There's like ecstatic joy, and then there's calm joy. You were talking about when you feel calm. It's like neither's better than the other. Just they're kind of different types. So it's not like joy encapsulates all these things because I can feel joy holding a nice book, like a really well produced book. It's got like engravings in the cover, so it's like tactile. The pages are thick and beautiful. The author's a great writer. I'm like really like pulled into what they're exploring. I feel joy in that moment, but it's calm, it's focused. And I think that's probably my point is focusing a sense, and which is what the creative instinct that I have comes from. It's like it's in need of becoming a form of structure for me to feel like comfortable within it and not to go completely out of control. However, as you're saying, if it's calm joy, that's not as I'm not worried about that because it's calm. If it goes on to the like, you know, oh my god, the universe is unbelievable. There's all these things happening, and then it starts racing and racing. Sometimes that's amazing. Sometimes it's not.
Everything is and it isn't.
I mean, it's always amazing, but like sometimes it's not necessarily positive. And the other thing to respond to the image you were saying um, with the yolk and through into the bread, it's like, yeah, you can find, and this is one thing that's so great with poetry. It's like you find these small moments in your life that are expanded by describing them in certain ways and change your relationship to it. There's a Seamus Heaney poem that I like using, which is about a woman ironing, and it's the I can't remember if it's a metaphor or a simile he uses, but it's the iron that's coming down onto the ironing board like a plane onto a runway. And that image makes the whole moment that is so simple this like much larger idea. And now when I think about an iron or ironing, I feel that kind of archetypal, massive sense of what is essentially a simple human action. So, in attention to the small things, you can bring about the like deepest truths of the human experience and more. And that in itself is joyful. If you observe, this is what haiku is all about. If you observe the smallest moments, but they become so enlarged and so true. They shape and change your consciousness as a result. That is joy. And I'm feeling joy just saying that. So, ironically, as well, or maybe not, I'm getting to joy through talking about it with you right now.
Isn't that funny with so many emotions, but in particular, happiness of like, it's true that if you smile, even if you're not feeling great, you put it's hard for me to do because I'm talking,
Like,
but it changes your mood like pretty quickly. I know you can like plaster a smile that's fake. It's like you hear that like even people will say like on the phone you can tell if somebody's smiling on the phone like when they're talking. There's like people sound different when they're smiling, when they're happy. You just said so many beautiful things in there, and I loved the example of the iron on the runway. It's so good, and that kind of glide as well. I also wanted to put you on the spot a little bit,
no, please put me on the spot.
but thinking about joy and thinking about joy in writing and channeling joy into your writing, can you come up with a like what would be a what would be a writing prompt example for somebody that wants to write about joy with poetry? I told you I'd put you on the spot.
Start with memory. We are right now, and because it's in conversation, it's probably easier, but we're like jigging this joy muscle. We're getting like something up and out. I don't know about you, but it's like I'm feeling it alongside some other things. So I would say, like, find a moment in your memory that you have experienced joy and just write about it, but write about the particulars of it. So this is one thing that it can be hard to do. It's harder in memory unless you have direct observation of something. But if you can find really specific details in a memory, really specific ones that you wouldn't think about if you were just making it up. Let's say you were at a concert and you were feeling particularly joyful during a certain musical performance, or everyone's looking at the stage. But what else is happening? Like, what's the poet also doing? Because there's all these obvious things that are happening, and it's all amazing and it's so big. But what about people dropping a cup on the floor? Maybe the plastic cup is spinning around a little bit. Someone that was dancing with their head down kind of kicked it a bit, and it spun funny, and it pointed towards you. And you
Hmm.
felt pointed to by the. You can get really like into a specific that you're like, oh, then you feel like you're actually there, even as a writer and then also as the reader. So yeah, to answer the prompt, it's to go into a memory of joy, but to find the very specifics in it. By all means, write about the whole experience, but like the more specific you get, the more interested uh, a reader will be, and the more particular and exact you are in your expression.
I love that. That made me feel so much joy. I love that.
Are you just saying that, or
No, no. So I think with that in mind, what I would really like to try here through this Poetry Vessel podcast is using what Nathan just said as a prompt for everybody. In the comments, if that prompt spoke to you, leave a poem, a haiku, something that uses memory and joy, and we'd love to read what that is. Yeah, I'd love to try this as something new that we do. And if we see a lot of poems, I think that would be really cool to have a comment section filled with joyful poems. I think that would be really special.
and isn't that the poetry vessel? We're keeping it within the
Hmm.
vessel and creating poems. And I just want to say as well, like, as we were discussing, there's no pressure that the poem concludes or even is exactly about joy. It can start there, or it can be a memory that you find joyful. The poem then will take on its own life. That's one thing I think with poetry. It's like you write with fluidity and then you edit for clarity. If you try and jam, if you try and make something inauthentically about joy, you're not going to necessarily feel it. So I like saying this when there's any writing prompt. It's like whatever emotion comes from that memory and whatever needs to be explored and whatever truth you may uncover, let it be what it is. I I really like that from writing prompts because I think they're good as guides, but not to hold you into something.
As always, that was really well said, Nathan. Obviously, such a professional at writing prompts and helping others to write. I know that's really helped me to creatively express myself. And I also just wanted to say, even if you're not a poet, maybe there's something that's brought you joy uh, in your life as well. Feel free to leave that in the comments below too. I want to make sure everyone feels included. There was something else I wanted to say.
That was a great point.
Thank you.
Before you say that, I want to give a shout out to an image that you made in a poem. You correct me if I say this wrong, and I will say it again. It's you, and it might not be like an image that's necessarily associated with something positive, but I think you made it beautiful. It was the cigarette slouched in a car ashtray. Was the word slouched?
Yeah, it was slouched.
Okay.
But I think the rest of it was phrased a little bit differently. But yeah, I like that image. Definitely for me, not a joyful image. Cigarettes come with a lot of negative associations. But I like that you liked the image I made.
Do you know what it makes me think of associatively?
Hmm.
Like people in a hot tub.
I had the same thing. That's so weird. It
Have
was
we
like
spoke about
maybe
that?
maybe we talked about that. It was like, yeah, them all almost like in a jacuzzi and they're like, yeah, that was what I was going for because I feel like
Did
that's
we?
how cigarettes can look. They're all like slouched. We must have talked about it.
Okay, we must have done, but like, let's. That's such a excellent associative, unexpected, and strange metaphor.
Thank
You
you.
must have said something to do with it, and I was just. It's in my head because of that, but it's like it's so strong of an image, but it's like rather than being this like fun party, it's a bit more like a depressive, like in the mire. But that's what makes it so strong because it's like we're talking about opposites, right? It's like
Well,
they're
thank
sitting
you.
across each other. So yeah, it's a beautiful metaphor using something that's ugly but specific, which becomes beautiful because of it.
Thank you. I'm learning.
You are learning.
I think as well, you were talking about jubilations earlier. I know you've mentioned, I'm not sure if it's something you want to talk about, but I know you've mentioned before that you struggled when the prompt is, hey, we're having a joyful event. This needs to be a really positive, uplifting poem, that you've struggled with that sometimes. And because I think something that is like quintessentially joyful can be sometimes hard to write about in a way that's not cliche or overly done or obvious. What do you think about that?
A couple things. I don't think art exists just to make you feel better. Like, art is a challenge. It's there to challenge you and challenge the world that you live in. It's when I think about writing about something that's positive, or you say, "Oh, give a positive message," it's like, well, do we just want to go in and make ourselves feel better, or do we want to create like actual change and find out actual truths and find out something we didn't know before we were there? Now that can happen with joy. So there's knowledge and wisdom inside of joy as well. But I'm very sensitive to the idea that like, oh, just write positive. There's some poets I read, and sometimes I get a little bit tired of the conclusions because I see so many poems coming to the same conclusion, which is it's just hopeful. And hope isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if everything's hopeful, if every message is hopeful, it's like it doesn't feel like we're moving forward because we're stuck in one mode. It's the same as every realization was depressing. It's like, well, something in your life probably needs to change so that it's not just depressing. So I see it the same, and it's like, is it challenging?
Right.
So that's where I get like, I think it's perfectly valid to express joy in poetry and art. Of course, it's an emotion, but that's why I said about the prompt as like, there's no need to narrow it into the expectation. It's like you also can break the idea or break the prompt open or break yourself and other people open through art. Like the best art challenges you. You are different as a result of interacting with it. You don't just go away and be like, okay, I got that little pick me up. It's like I did my quick, downing of a beer.
But it can uplift you.
Yeah, I agree. It can. What do you think? I mean, you don't have to agree.
No, I think for the most part I agree. I It reminds me of kind of like a Disneyfication of storytelling or
Mm,
writing, where every story or poem or movie or whatever has to have a happy ending. I mean, sometimes though we watch an episode of something and there's not a happy ending. You're like, whoa, what gives? Like, why did they do that? It would have felt so much better for me as a person watching it if that had been a happy ending and if it was satisfying in that way and gave me all the things that I want. But life's not like that.
yeah.
Sometimes we get happy endings, and happy endings are great. Like, I love when a story or a show or a movie uplifts me too, but I also admire the artists that do who challenge that,
Hmm.
who don't always give you what you want in the poem or the poem or the story that might surprise you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, life isn't a pat on the back. If you went your whole life, oh, well done. Are you going to get anywhere if that's all you receive? I mean, I think about this when I was starting out writing. I used to have a account on a website where everyone would share their writing.
Mhm.
Very positive place. There was no critical input. And at that age, I was like between 17 and 19. It was nice to feel like I was being interacted with and understood, and I felt good about it. However, luckily, I realized I'm not going to get any further, and these are just going to be me dribbling my emotions out. And it's not going to go beyond personal sentiment and whatever depression I was reinforcing with what I was doing. It was like I was purely seeking validation. I wasn't seeking to be challenged. And if someone did challenge me, I would have gone really like into myself and self pitying. And it's like, but if I still had that, if it was only a pat on the back throughout my life, I would still be writing the same things. And it's the same with, I think, what we're being challenged with. It's like, of course, We like credit where it's due, like positive feedback. I also like critical feedback,
I would
even if it's
say
hard to hear.
constructive, though, not just critical, because critical isn't always helpful just because it's critical. Just because, I mean, there's the other side of the coin with somebody that's like, I've given you critical feedback, telling you I'm telling you like it is, take it or leave it. If you don't like my feedback, then, screw you. Like, that's not necessarily helpful, and that's not like helping the person improve and get better just because you're getting a criticism. Like, a criticism in itself is not innately helpful.
No,
I think there's like ways that you can receive feedback that is still constructive. I think that constructive part is important because it's like the aim of that is to make the thing better.
yeah, and
Like, if a million critical comments were on this video, that would kind of suck.
yeah,
Like, but hey, if there's a few constructive comments or there's some positive comments, like, I would take from that. We've already had a few constructive criticisms where it's really helped us and it's helped us grow and improve because, like you're saying, just the pats on the back are great, but we don't always necessarily learn from that unless we are just doing great and just keep doing what you're doing, kid, like, go for it, then fine. But I think there's always room to improve, even if it's just a little bit.
absolutely. And I completely agree. Everyone is entitled to give you feedback, you do not have to take it in. So if the feedback, and like you're saying, like you can be constructive and you can just be critical. If it's, if there's someone I don't really trust their opinion, not because I'm worried that they're going to say something negative, more just like they just don't like me and they'll just say negative things because they know it, or they're just trying to get to me or whatever. You can
Trolls.
use, yeah, and you can kind of ignore that. So it can be about the intention behind the person that's giving that feedback. So yeah, when I say critical, I mean constructive critical, not just like, I mean, if everyone's just like this is absolutely terrible, then maybe you do need to go to the drawing board, even if it's not nice.
True. I just didn't want you to invite an onslaught of critical feedback,
Yeah.
basically. Like, and that way it's like also being careful, just like as a side note of like being careful what we invite in. I want to also like, okay, critical feedback is good. All of these things are like, or constructive feedback is good. But I personally don't want to be part of a community that's really negative.
No, no, no. And this is a good point that you make. It's like, no, you want a positive community that wants the best for the community, and for a community to function best requires constructive criticism as well. So you're right. You don't. A community is not good if someone just walks in like you're all wrong because screw you and you're stupid and bleh, and then they walk out. It's like, well, they have no interest in the community. They have an interest in spouting. If someone's got a vested interest in the community and genuinely believe X might make this better and it's constructive, then it's something we take on and we have done, which is great. It's people that want the best for you and want the best for the community. When they give constructive feedback, you're like, okay, and you take it on and you improve.
Hmm.
So yeah, you're right.
I love hearing that I'm right just
Yeah,
over and over in
yeah.
this podcast. I'm just kidding. Um,
You've never
um,
been wrong. Pat on the
no,
back.
no.
I'll do it from. Just pretend you're me for a second.
Okay. I felt that. I felt that. I think in terms of what, if I'm thinking about what I want, it's like I want to be a part of a creative community that nurtures each other and helps each other grow and helps each other become the best that they can be. That's what I would like to be a part of personally. And I think that's what we're starting to build here, which is really great. And we're so appreciative for all of the love, the support, the feedback, the comments that we got in 2024. And this is something that I hope just continues to grow in 2025. We're both ambitious, but it's all really down to you guys. Like, We're still on our way. We're trying to get this channel monetized. We're putting in a lot of work into that. That only happens if people tune in and watch. So that feedback and that dialogue is so important for that of, having that genuine connection with you guys that are watching and talking about things that you want to hear and that you want to listen to and that helps you and gives you value. So, like anything, whether you're getting feedback on something you've written or a poem, or you're getting feedback on something you've made, like a YouTube video, all of that is important, I think, for growth. But I hope it comes from, you know, a good place.
Yeah.
Whoever's giving that and comes from a genuine place of wanting to see the best for you. I think that can really help
Yeah.
you grow immensely.
Yeah, and in the interest of talking about joy and sharing and having whole loaves of bread, it's like if we can get to a stage where we, come together and want the best for each other and not be afraid to challenge each other with the idea in mind that this is to improve and nurture the community, then I think we're moving forward in a good way. So I agree. It's like the love is great, and love is usually under a positive sentiment, and sometimes it's under a constructive sentiment, and they're both beautiful as we move forward. And it makes you feel joy that people care, and caring is multifaceted, not just a pat on the back. So I too appreciate um, everyone that's watched and supported so far, and I really invite your comments and ideas and thoughts, and we always consider them. What we take on board is ultimately our decision, but we consider what people say to us, both directly in comments that people write here, and then people that we know more privately that tell us through email or WhatsApp or whatever else, or just in person.
Yeah, I mean, I want to echo everything that Nathan was saying first and foremost. I think the other thing that I wanted to say, just like on a personal note, and if you're friends with me, you've probably already seen this on social media and things like that. But I assume that most of the people out there right now are people that I don't really know. Um, but I wanted to say from my own heart that sitting down, doing these podcasts, making videos with Nathan is something that's brought me genuinely so much joy over the last year. And I'm so excited to be making more. I think we've really hit our stride towards the end of 2024. We put out a few videos that I'm so excited about. For anyone who doesn't know my personal story, I've loved filmmaking and editing for a really long time, even though I still consider myself very amateur with all of this stuff.
I'm going to give you more credit than that, but
Well, it's something that I'm learning
yeah.
because it's something that brings me joy. It's something that I really love. I've always loved taking photos, taking videos, editing. I've been doing this since I was really young. Um, I did some acting for anyone who wants to Google find that when I was young too.
IMDb.
My claim to fame we'll save for another podcast episode. But I have spent, the last decade, and I don't want to rule myself out of any other future employers that may come across this video.
Look, fuck them.
But I I've been either in a startup culture or a corporate culture for much of the last decade of my life, if I wasn't in school as well. Um, and that took a lot out of me. That I wanted to say the 9 to 5 kind of grind, but honestly, it's not 9 to 5. It's so much longer than a 9 to 5. That is a daily, all hours. And especially when you're someone that, for me, I was working in a company, a few different companies, but as a manager. So I was a senior director at the last company I worked for and a director at the company before that. It's never just 9 to 5. And they don't want it to be 9 to 5, mind you. Like, no, most companies, it's because your brain is always thinking about these things, for a good reason. Maybe you care about your job, you care about the people you work with, you care about your team, you care about the customers. And I felt like I genuinely did, and I still would if I was in that situation now. But to be doing something now that I feel really passionate about means so much to me. To be making something creative and more artistic, to have the opportunity to sit down with my husband almost on a bi weekly basis like this and have a conversation and chat and connect with people online is so valuable and special to me. And I hope it brings you value too. So, just wanted to say that I'm really grateful and joyful for everything that starting YouTube has brought us. We've amassed over 6,000 subscribers now, but we're still working on those views. So, share this video with your friends if you like it if you like it, comment if you like it and you want to see more. Doing those things helps us make more videos.
And subscribe if you haven't already.
And subscribe if you haven't already. And we want to get better. So let us know what you want to see and hear from us. It just means a lot. Like, without getting too emotional, it means a lot to be doing this, and I'm just really grateful for everyone out there watching.
Yeah. And I want to say what you were just talking about, being in these, you call it the 9 to 5, but not the 9 to 5, in areas that are anti joy and try to manufacture joy in the way of achievement for another person or another interest. Of course, the trade off is, you know, stable paycheck and food, and that's nothing to be, you know,
No, of course not.
balked at because we live in a society where we need that. However, it's like, yeah, you're in joy stifling areas with people that say things like, we're family. And it's like, yeah,
Run if a company says
if
that
a
to you.
yeah,
If a company says we're a family, it's time to go.
it's one of the strangest things in some of modern work culture that I hear about. Well, we're just like a family. And it's like, really? Oh, last time I checked that, because my family, maybe if they weren't making as much money as they did the year before, they say, pack your bags, you're out, I'm never talking to you again.
Family
Maybe some families do, but that's not the ideal of a family.
families don't lay you off, for example. And it can take time away from your actual family.
Yeah.
And I feel
Yeah.
like that's a different psychological tool.
It's the ploy.
And the irony is not lost on me that, like, I studied industrial organizational psychology, which I talked about in episode 1, which is workplace or business psychology. And a lot of that is how to motivate employees, how to keep morale high. And as a manager in these positions, that's something that I prided myself on. I wanted to make sure that people that were working with me genuinely felt good about themselves and about what they were doing, that they felt appreciated, and that, you know, I led with some sort of dignity, grace. I don't know what word to use.
You're very compassionate with people
Thank you.
and understanding, and that's why you didn't always suit some of the places you were, because compassion was seen as wrongly as weakness, because you took a genuine interest in other people's lives and you didn't just have the, oh, I'm just motivating them because I want them to be productive. Like, you always would talk to me about genuinely about people's like needs and wanting to cater to that because you cared about them as individuals, not just as a bunch of people working under you. So I appreciate that about you, despite absolutely loving that you're not fully enmeshed in whatever you want to find as a metaphor to call corporate America.
And work is important. I wouldn't shy away from work at a good company with good benefits for their employees that's doing good things in the world. I think that's amazing. But yeah, I don't think people should be treated like numbers. People aren't robots. I know there's a lot of positions now that are getting replaced by AI.
Yeah, robots are robots.
Robots are robots. And
If you're going to take anything away from today's
and
conversation.
when push comes to shove with most people, like how many times you call a business or you go online to their website and you chat with a business and you get the AI robot. And a lot of the time you're pressing 0 on the phone for a representative, or you're saying, I want to talk to a live human person, please. Because often we can't get what we need from something robotic. People crave human connection, and that's what's so important about writing and poetry and the arts and film and all of these different things, is they're a way to foster this real human connection. So despite advancements, and there's plenty of advancements that I think are good, I use AI, I do some work training AI. Even so, this is so fulfilling to me. And I'm really appreciative.
And we want to, speaking of when you, even if you call a company or whatever, you want to be able to talk to someone that, if they're not experiencing it in that moment, at least has the capacity to experience joy, which a robot AI does not.
We're little robots.
Poor little robots. And if they ever change to experiencing joy, I love you, robot. Okay?
Me and ChatGPT have a good relationship. I tried to
Oh,
be
you've
very,
been talking to him, have you?
yeah, I tried to be very polite and respectful with ChatGPT because you never know.
You never know. And with that, thank you so much for watching. This is the Poetry Vessel. This is Rachael Hassall. My name's Nathan Hassall. We'll see you next time.
I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Sorry, fucking legs hurt so much.
Sorry I got so existential at the end.
No, it's good.